Welcome to Cleve's Tech and another video in my continuing series on Fooocus for Stable Diffusion. Today I'm going to be going over some tips for consistent character creation, but mostly I'm going to be diving into FaceSwap. Now don't forget, I have many other videos on Fooocus from install to poses and much more, so check those out. Before I jump too far in, I don't want to get your expectations too high like other videos do and tell you, well, this is easy, it's simple, it works perfectly, and we are all happy, because that's just not the fact. It works pretty well if you have the right source pictures, for one thing, and you spend a little bit of time tweaking things. Then you can get pretty decent results, but it's not just a simple click the button, boom, you're done. First thing I'll get into is with consistent character creation, just some tips that other people have and ones that I might use. So one of the popular ones is to use celebrity names with different weights. So for example, in this one, I generated one image. So let's say I wanted to create some source images and I wanted to look a certain way. I could sit there and take different celebrity names, mix them as I put in here. You know, I have Kerry Russell, Natalie Portman I picked out, and I applied different weights, and I just stuck with a simple prompt, not too complex. Now, one thing I do recommend is when doing this is to turn off the Focus V2, because that does add different terms to the prompt. So I like to avoid that. And so I have, let's say, my first image. So let's say I want another one, but this one I want the person smiling. Now in here, I'd make sure it's the same seed. So I've unchecked random, and then I'll generate one more image. Go ahead and we'll have our two images to start off with. That's one way that people do try to get consistency. It does work pretty well. Like I said, if you stick with the same model and everything, if you switch to a different model, you're going to probably get a different outcome, or LoRa's and things like that. So whenever you're doing this, you want to stick with the same thing. I find you start off, you get a consistent multiple different faces, and then use those for reference later in the face swapping. Okay, so we have another image. So this will just give you an idea. We have two different images, and you could create multiple different ones, find the ones that all look identical. They're usually, I find this way works pretty well if you don't switch models and things like that. So that's one way that you can do it. The other way that I'm gonna use for this one to show is to actually instead create a grid of 4. So in this one, I've got everything already set up, a grid of 4 images of the same beautiful woman with 4 different expressions, red hair. That's all I just went with, simple prompt, nothing complex. On this one, we could use the Focus V2. That's not an issue for what I'm doing here, because we're gonna actually create one at a time. So let's go ahead and generate this. So the nice thing is, when we do this, we're gonna get a grid of the same person. Now, the problem I have is I haven't found the best prompt to get all different angles with different expressions, things like that. If anybody knows a good prompt for doing that, then that would be great. Put it in the comments. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just, well, let's see what this next one looks like. Nah, I'm gonna go with the one we got. Okay, so we have these 4. This is all one image, so it's gonna be the same person. Now, preferably, if you can get different ones, like with the mouth closed, mouth open, but we'll start off with this one for my example on how the face swap works. So at this point, let's say I have the images. These are the 4 that I want. If you wanted to go this way, then we go to the input image. I drag this down. I want to upscale it. I'll leave the same prompt in there. Now, upscaling 2x or these 2 options will slightly modify what it looks like. So if you're very, very set on the facial details and stuff, I would normally just go with the fast upscale. You can go with the upscale 2x. That's entirely up to you at that point. I'm going to just go ahead with the upscale 2x myself. I'm going to pause my recording while I do this because I can't upscale and record at the same time. Okay, so we have our images upscaled. And now what I find the easiest way to do this is just to open the image in Paint or something like that. And then we can just go ahead. We will select each one and crop it, and then I'll save it. And then we can just go ahead and save each image separately. Once we've gone ahead and saved that, when we can crop the next one and just keep going through until you have all your images split apart. I won't go through all that. So once we have our images split apart, then we're going to want to go down into the image prompt area, and under the image prompt tab, you do want to make sure at the bottom here if you don't have any of the face swap options, you want to check off advanced all the way at the bottom. So you'll have all those options. Then at that point, we can take our images that we have broken apart and we can drop these in there. And you want to check these off to face swap as well. The default settings you're going to get when you do the face swap, I don't find are usually heavy enough, but you're going to mess with those and tweak with those. This will give you a pretty decent result, but you'll probably have to crank these up. Now, I don't find weights over 1 really help, but that's just been in my testing. The stop at, consider that as it's going to use that. This right here is saying for 94% of that generation, stick with the face. So it's going to be hard. If you want to adjust the look of the face, the emotion, you may have to lower that to get the results that you want. So for these, I'm going to just put these up a little bit. I'm not going to crank them too much because I do want, for now, I'm going to put a priority on one of these over the other. And then in here, we'll just go ahead and type up a prompt, a woman having coffee in a coffee shop. And we'll just go ahead and generate a couple images. Now, when we prompt, we don't have to do anything else because we've already have these checked off. So it knows when we do this that it's going to use that image prompt in the face swap. So whatever image it generates, we'll use that. Okay, so we have our images generated. Let's see how they compare to the source image, just for reference. So looking at those results, I'm actually pretty satisfied with how that came out just on the first settings that I used. Like I said, you may have to tweak those settings to get exactly what you want. And one thing I do suggest is once you find the settings that work well for what you're doing, you go ahead and take a screenshot of this area so you can go back and remember what those exact settings were for the results that you wanted to get. Now, there is going to be some difficulty when you go to create some of these because all these images, you're going to notice the look is almost identical to the original face. By having more images, I feel it gives you a little more flexibility. But if those images aren't different emotions and stuff, it's still not going to solve all your problems when it comes to that. So let's try another one. I'm going to demonstrate how it can be a little more difficult to get what you want. So I've used another image here that I have. These are all slightly different angles, but all the same emotion on the face. It's not happy, not sad, just pretty much indifferent. So to get the results that we want is going to be a little harder if we don't have some of the variations in that facial expression. So let's go ahead with this one. I'm going to generate the same thing. But so for this one, I'm going to say a woman smiling and having coffee in a coffee shop. So let's go ahead and generate those images. Okay, so we have our images generated, and if you notice in there, if we look at these images, for the most part, it got the face for the most part correct. It's not perfect. The eyes, I do find a lot of times don't carry over perfectly. That is one thing I have noticed. I created one with green eyes. The green didn't carry over, the blue did. These aren't the exact same shade of blue, but that also can have to do with the weight that we've applied to the images in the facial, face swap features. But as we're gonna notice here, there's not much of a smile on that. The reason for that is it's much harder for it to generate that smile because the original face didn't have a smile on it. And one thing you can do is you could increase the weight up here in the prompt. That's one way of producing a little bit better results. The other option is to reduce the weight and the stop out of these. So the weight is more of how much it influences the final image. The stop at is when it stops influencing it. And so if you set those to lower amounts, it's going to give it Fooocus a little more time to actually generate what it wants. The downfall will be that the face may not be quite as exact. So you're going to sacrifice some of that resemblance to get different emotions that you may want. Now, this is where it's actually useful. If you had different images that did have different expressions, you could apply more weight and a higher stop at to the one that's smiling when you want the person smiling. If they're sad, you'd have the sad one. If they were angry or happy or any of those emotions, you could use those images to apply more weight and to get the results that you want from each one of those. So let's go ahead and generate this one again. Now I have reduced the weight and stop out of these. I've also increased the weight of the smiling in the prompt, and we'll generate and see the difference of this. Okay, so we have our images generated. Okay, so these are our first images. So as we can see, it's the one on the left. We just went with a smile. We didn't change the weight or stop at or anything. And on the one on the right, we changed the weight. We've changed the stop at. We've increased the smile in the prompt, the weight. Now, the one downfall is I've noticed the resemblance went down slightly. The eyes seem a little bit, dimmer. Those are the sorts of things that you're going to have to tweak and adjust to find what you're willing to sacrifice to get a look that you might be trying to get. That's why I said it's a lot easier if you have multiple images that have different expressions. You can increase the influence of those expressions, whereas with the other ones, you can't. So let's, I'm going to show you one more example here. I've got some other images. We're only going to use 2 for this one. And I'm going to, for this one initially, I'm going to use a higher weight on this. We're going to set this right at the stop at 1. We're going to set that one lower. This has a lower influence. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. I'm not going to actually put any facial expression in because technically that should pull in from this one the same, pretty much the exact same facial expression at this point where I have the stop at and the weight set so high. Okay, so if we pull these up and look at the comparisons, we'll find the original image. So this is the one that we had more heavily weighted. As you can see, the eyes did not carry over. Pretty much everything else carried over. So that's one thing in the prompt. I'd probably want to put the eye color if I want a different eye color. I didn't notice that as much with some of the other colors. Green seemed to be the one that didn't seem to carry over as much. So I'm not sure on that one. So we'll see in both of these, we pretty much got the same facial expression from that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up and change this. So we're going to actually down here, we're going to lower this down. We'll put that down at a lower weight and a lower stop at. This one I'm now going to increase up to 1 and a higher weight. And I'm not going to change anything else in this prompt, and we're just going to go ahead and generate again. This is the same seed. Okay, so we have our images generated, and we'll go in and look at these. Now, this contradicted me a little bit because as we can see, one of those images didn't give me the same smile as the second reference image. Now, I could probably adjust the weight more and change that. I could also put a big smile, but that does give you an idea of how you can adjust those weights and stop ats to change the influence of which ones of these pictures. Now, you might ask, why not just put one in there? My experience so far, when I only had one in there, I didn't get as good of results. Even if I put the other ones at a lower weight and only gave priority to one of the images, I still always found I got better results by using multiple images down there. Now, you can still use the other functions down here as well, along with the face swap. So don't be afraid. That's why I don't mention to use all 4. You might want to use something down in these other ones. So you can use 2. 2 or 3, I didn't test the difference between those too much, but I do know more than one image definitely had an impact on the results that I was getting. Now, another thing I do want to mention is, let's say we had an image here. So we have this one on the left. You can use the FaceSwap for inpainting as well. And I actually find this is useful to, let's say you get an image that you generated. It's not exactly what you wanted. And so you just want to adjust it slightly. So I'm going to come down here to my Inpaint tab. And I didn't change anything in the image prompt. That I'm leaving as it is. I'm going to pull this down into the Inpaint tab. I'm going to actually paint over the face. And one thing you need to do if you want to use the FaceSwap and the Inpainting is you have to go under the Advanced section, check off Developer Debug Mode, and then in the Control Options, you'll find Mixing Image Prompt and Inpaint. So if you enable that, now we can use the FaceSwap on the Inpainting. So let's say we had this image, but we want it to be a bigger smile. So I could reduce the weight of this for one thing and the stop at. And we left that one as the same. And I'm going to put with a big smile. And now we're going to generate. Okay, so we got our images generated. Now, I'm not a real big fan. I don't think these came out as good as I would have liked. So let's actually get those green eyes. Put a big smile. You know, I'm going to put the weight up on these because I actually found that the face lost some of it. And I think it's because we're not using as much of this image as I'd like to. So I'm going to actually try this again. Same thing, using the Inpainting. And I've added the green eyes just so I can show you we should be able to get those green eyes if we wanted to. But you're going to have a hard time with a consistent character getting the exact same shade of eyes. So you might be better off trying something like brown or something like that for standard eye color. So I'm going to stop the recording, generate it, because I can't upscale. This does upscaling when it does generate. So, okay, so now that we have tweaked our results, I can actually see these look better right from the start. So the one on the left is the one that we originally had the lower weight the first time we did the Inpainting. The second one on the right is when we increased the weight of the second image. We didn't change the other image. We only changed the... Now, let's pull that up so I can show you here. So back in the image prompt, we had increased the weight of this one, which we had originally reduced. And then we left the one on the right here the same. Wasn't so good as far as the original image of the person. The one on the right is. As we can see here, if we look at these images, this one is much closer. And that's because we had the higher weight on the image. So you really want to play around with those to get the results that you want. As I said, you're going to have a harder time getting a different facial expression. If it's drastically different, then you're really going to have even more difficult time. But that's something that you can play with as far as what the Inpainting goes with, the image prompts, and everything else. It's just a lot of tweaking, a lot of playing around until you find exactly what you want. And when you do find the settings that work, keep track of those settings so you can use those in the future as well. Now, one thing I will mention is this. I've had people ask me, well, can I use the FaceSwap and then do a completely different style? Yes and no, because, well, let's go in here. I'm going to actually check off all of these. Let's go with the, adorable 3D character one. So I'm going to turn off the Inpainting for this. We don't need that in there. Okay, so we currently have this set up. I have this FaceSwap set up just as before. We'll increase the weight on these. And that's fine. And we'll go ahead and generate. Okay, so we have our adorable 3D character generation, but when we look at it, we can tell it's not really that good of a 3D character. And it really comes down to, from my deduction on these, is the weight. The higher weight on these will impact that, because these are more photographic. So if we were actually to reduce these down, let's try again and see what we get for results. Let's pull those up. So as you can see, we now have more of the look that we were probably going for with these than we were with the other ones. So if you want to apply certain types of styles, you may have to lower the weight and the stop at to get exactly what you're looking for. Another option is use a different model. That's something we can do as well. So for example, in here, let's say we went with the anime one. We'll go with anime here. Although I don't even think I need to at that point. But now let's go ahead and generate and see what happens with this. I'm not going to change the weights or anything. Well, you know what? I actually am for this, because I expect the results to be a little bit different with this, because we're using a different model. So there we go. So as you can see, definitely changing the model does have a huge impact, but you can still use the face swap to bring that in. You may need to reduce the weight, although I find if you're using a model that's trained, like this one's trained on anime, so it's going to do much better. You won't necessarily have to reduce the weight as much. Okay, and one last thing I discovered while messing around with these things, you can, when you're doing the styles, so in here I have that adorable 3D character. In previous, we didn't get the results that we wanted. You can actually, when you reduce these weights enough, as you've seen down here, I've reduced them, a decent amount. And I've changed the prompt to a woman with green eyes dancing, and I have the adorable 3D character. Now I can go ahead and generate, and we'll see different results than we got last time because we lowered those weights. Here we got much better results this time than we got previously because we lowered those weights. So this time they actually do look like 3D characters instead of more photographic. So a lot of it comes down to the weights and the stop at. The stop at, remember, that's kind of where it stops having the influence, and the weight is how much influence it has overall. So by adjusting those with any of these, that'll impact a lot of your results, and you really want to mess around with those. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to show with using FaceSwap. The two biggest factors that I have found to determine how well FaceSwap will work is the quality of the source images and adjusting the stop at and the weight to get the results that you want. If you found this video helpful, please do consider hitting the like button, since it does help. Don't forget to check out my other videos on Fooocus as well. Any questions or tips on getting better results, definitely leave those in the comments, and have a great day.